I'll never forget, he said, Terry, that needs to be the last time you refer to anyone as sir in this environment. And boy, the truth, the real answer, I love it, but it was income. For me to step into a sales role or a role where you kind of just got to figure it out for yourself at that point in time, I wasn't ready for that. I certainly wasn't ready for that. And I knew that. If you can put phasing into your thinking around your career, you will serve yourself extremely well. Yeah. Extremely well.
Hey, welcome to the Mastering the Military Transition series of the Prize podcast. My name is PJ, and I'll be your host. The purpose of this podcast is to share the story of those who have successfully transitioned out of the military so that you can see some of the tools and tricks necessary to have a successful transition of your own. That way, you don't have to stumble across some of the same things that I know that myself and my team at Prize had to struggle with ourselves. At Prize, we believe in a world where all enjoy the freedom to grow. And that's why we're developing the Prize app. If you want to find out more, click on the prize.vet link in the show notes below. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Please like, subscribe, and if you have any feedback for us, please drop it in the comments.
Hey fam, welcome to our next episode of the Prize podcast. Today we have with us Terry Wallace. He right now is the owner of Venture X Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. He was in the Marine Corps. Already enlisted in the Marine Corps, and then upon getting out, he did a stint as a police officer. Yeah. Went and did Deloitte consulting for a bit, which is, we'll have to talk about that. That's an interesting one. And then you were at Pfizer, and then WeWork, and then now you Venture X, which is awesome. So hey, thank you for
good to see you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
So I mean, to kick things off, the first thing that I would really just love to hear from you is like, what was your journey like? Mm-hmm. How did you become the Terry that is sitting here in front of you today?
That's a scary thought. I'll even go back before my time in the Marine Corps. So I grew up in a military family. My father was in for many, many years. He actually just retired at 82, and he still subcontracted out to the Department of Defense.
Wow.
So he did a good 60 years in some way, shape, or form, either directly or indirectly with the military. So anyway, grew up in a military family, moved every 2 or 3 years, my whole life. You understand, most of your folks are understanding what we're doing. We lived all around the U.S. We lived in New Zealand for a couple of years.
Oh, cool.
Back to the U.S., then back to Australia. Then when we were in Australia, I did my high school years in Australia. So I share that, one from the military angle. The other is that nomadic dynamic that can kind of come through your life in the military, which actually I think is partially why I do what I'm doing now. So anyway, life in the military. In my family, that was kind of what you did. You went into the military. I had every intention. The Marine Corps really hit me when we were in Australia. So we lived there. We lived right across the street from, I guess he was a gunnery sergeant, but he was the gentleman who was in charge of security, obviously, in the Marines at the embassies.
Oh, cool. So
I would see these fellas periodically when we'd go and visit my father, whatever it might be, at work, because he was at the embassy in Australia. And I honestly, 13, 14 years old, I remember just thinking, wow, those guys are sharp. I want to be that. That's what I want to do. So honestly, from 14 on, I was going to be an officer in the Marine Corps. Journey kept continuing. I enlisted first, and then I was going to go to, continue the progress. And then just decided this wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I enjoyed it immensely. Couldn't think of a negative word to say about the Marine Corps if you gave me a year, other than its reason for existence, but other than that, just as solid as an organization could ever grace this earth.
Yeah.
And so I did my time there, got out, and I wanted to get into this strange, weird civilian life. And I don't know that I wasn't ready for the full jump. So I thought to myself, what's something that I can kind of ease this transition a little bit? And I thought, law enforcement, that makes sense. They wear uniforms, they have rules, they have, sidearms, we know whatever it means. This will be very similar. This will be very familiar. It wasn't. It was very, very different.
Interesting.
Very, very, very different. As I mentioned about the Marine Corps, you can't say a bad word about it. Law enforcement similar. I mean, some of the finest people I've ever met, some of the finest people I've ever worked with. Very difficult job. Very difficult job. And I don't think anyone would debate that. Now, this is in the 90s, mid 90s. I can't even fathom doing that job nowadays.
Yeah.
It's just brutal. So I was a police officer. I did the first year. I thought, this is amazing. I love it. It was exciting. It was interesting, all those type of things. And truth be told, we did 12-hour swing shifts, 12-hour 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Man.
I tell you, I didn't sleep a day or a night the whole time I was a cop. I really mean that. I don't think I ever got a good day or night sleep. It was brutal. And I thought to myself, I don't know that I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I started going back to night school to get my MBA. And I had no clue what I was going to do with it, but I thought it can't be a bad thing. Yeah, and I'm going to make this work some way, shape, or form. Even if I stayed as an officer, it'd be great to have. So I did a 2-year accelerated degree program to get my MBA, but it took me 4 years, mainly because my studies were quite good. Let me just be, but it was difficult. I didn't get time off. I was paying for it out of pocket. The police department didn't pay for it. So honestly, I was using my vacation time because that swing shift is a real difficult thing to have any type of regularity about. It was 12-hour shifts, 2 days on, 2 off, 3 on, 2 off. It was very difficult to integrate life with this schedule.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, it took me 4 years. And during that time, I was talking to professors that I was drawn to. Yeah, I was really impressed with them, their thoughts and the way they conducted themselves, and said, I wanted a business boot camp. I wanted to drink from a fire hose. I have always in my life, for whatever reason, I'm sure it's served me well, and sometimes not so well other times, felt like I was behind. I was trying to catch up.
Oh, interesting.
So during that time, I thought, boy, I'm behind. I want to catch up. I want to catch up. And the suggestion from a few of them was management consulting. So that's where you're going to get thrown into the deep end. That's where you're going to do the long hours. You're going to do the travel. You're going to, you're really going to grind it out in a war room, whether it's for an acquisition or a divest. You don't understand what I'm getting at. So I sought out to be a management consultant. I have still at home, I have printouts of 36 rejection letters. And I look back now and I kept them. I actually found some sort of pride in these rejections because I knew I was going to get it eventually.
Yeah.
So I kept almost all of them. I don't know that I kept all of them, but I have a binder with them. I don't know where it is, but I'll dig it up. But I had 36. No, 36. In retrospect, I recognized I didn't know what to do with me. Marine Corps, police officer, business strategy management consultant. Like it wasn't computing for folks. Fair enough. I went and interviewed at Deloitte, which was one of the top firms that I really wanted to get into.
Yeah, sure.
Interviewed with a partner there, and they had said, and I don't know if they really meant it or they were just trying to be kind to me. They said, look, everything's great. However, we've got this big project. What we really need right now is someone with formal training, presentation experience, which I didn't have formal. Debatable whether I had that, but anyway, I went back to a school called Rosemont College, which is actually affiliated with Villanova University. They taught a 5-week accelerated courses there. I interviewed to teach a negotiation and mediation skills course.
Oh, interesting.
Got the gig, taught it 5 weeks. Set up the meeting, came back and met with that partner again and said, I have formal trading presentation experience.
Wow.
He hired me on the spot. I think they were in a bit of a bind, to be honest with you. Matter of fact, I know they were. Hired me on the spot. He liked the tenacity, the approach, the follow through. Fair enough.
Resourcefulness.
And my first project was to work with NYMEX, New York Mercantile Exchange. For anyone who's listening, New York Mercantile Exchange, if you picture the days when there's a trading floors and there's the big circles of people.
Yeah.
And
buy, sell.
Exactly. Yeah. They're writing on the tabs and they literally are throwing throwing these cards in, and they're screaming and yelling. And the one who's the most aggressive and assertive and yells the loudest and gets in the right position gets the buys and gets the sells. So this project was to move from that dynamic to their first foray at an automated system.
Yeah.
So this was 1999 going into 2000. So there was the whole, the Y2K, what the hell is going to happen? Anyway, so it was moving all these folks who had built their careers and got earned their livings by yelling, screaming, writing on papers and doing their thing. And now it was time to get them to actually have these handheld devices where they were going to do all of this, through a computer system.
That's cool.
And they wanted nothing to do with it. So the reason they hired me was they thought this guy with his background he'll be more comfortable being put in front of these rooms full of very hostile, aggressive traders to tell them that they have to now do their job differently. And it was mayhem. It was absolute mayhem. So anyway, that was my first project. I was at Deloitte for a number of years, then shifted over to Pfizer, which was one of our clients. I had a wonderful run at Pfizer, 12-ish years at Pfizer. I ended up leading global HR operations at Pfizer.
Interesting.
So it was every role that I had at Pfizer didn't exist before I had it, which is something else I want to mention because I think it's going to be important in this conversation.
Yeah.
So as organizations were changing and evolving, there were the jobs that they had, and then what started forming, and even more so to this day, is these interim jobs, these connecting jobs, these cross-functional jobs, these project and program management jobs. Yes, and beyond, but definitely at Pfizer. And it was those roles that provided, I would say, the greatest opportunities to learn and grow. With that was also the greatest opportunity, to be frank, to fail and not work out. So there was kind of a risk-reward dynamic there. I'll back up a little bit. When I was at Deloitte, I said, I put a stake in the ground. It comes off my tongue pretty quickly, but it took me a good year to think this one through. And I wanted a North Star for my career. And what I came up with was head of HR for a global company with a noble purpose, which seems pretty easy, pretty straightforward, but boy, it took me a while. It served me well because I chose opportunities, went after opportunities, projects, whatever it might be, based on that, with that kind of theme in mind, direction in mind. I also turned down opportunities and projects and roles because they weren't in that direction. Right. So looking back, that served me very well. It served me very well. With that said, while at Pfizer, I then was somebody reached out to me. I had Honor reach out to me and proposed this opportunity to lead global HR operations for this funny little startup called WeWork. Oh, yeah. At the time. And, the WeWork story is pretty infamous / notorious, whatever you want to call it. I then interviewed over at WeWork. I actually turned the job down. And then, because honestly, it was just such a different planet for what I had experienced in my life, coming from very, very sophisticated, rigorous companies, and even organizations, whether it's the Marine Corps or Deloitte or Pfizer, right? WeWork was a rapid growth startup. I mean, if not the rapid growth startup. And it was very confusing to me. And honestly, I didn't know how well I could do there. Then this gentleman took a very senior role in WeWork who reached back out to me. And we went and had a nice long dinner there in the city. And it convinced me at the end of it, like, you know what? I literally said, there's going to be a movie about this company someday. And there's more than one. Yeah. And I said, I can either sit there and say, yes, I was part of that journey. And I honestly, I didn't know, is it going to be a horror film? Was it a comedy? Was it going to be a, whatever. But it was going to be film worthy. Let's put it that way. No doubt in my mind. Or I could sit in that theater and watch it and think, how the hell did I miss that? How the hell did I miss that journey? That was it. I jumped on board. I was at WeWork for a little over, 3.5 years. And that was a wild ride, to say the least. I enjoyed it. I learned a great deal because, like I said, going back to a Pfizer or Deloitte, very sophisticated, rigorous, thoughtful organizations, and for very obvious reasons. And then you've got this company that the only thing that mattered was growth.
Yeah.
More square footage, more project, more building, more construction, more people. I mean, we were hiring in waves and firing in tsunamis. It was a wild existence and a wild ride. At one point there, I finally said, that's it. It was time for me to move on. And the only criteria I had was I want my own business and I'm done traveling. Absolutely done.
Yeah.
I had traveled I had traveled probably, I don't know. Well, I had traveled extensively for about 20 years. We've lived here in the Valley for most of those years. I left Sunday night and I came home very late Friday night almost every week. Yeah, it was rough. It was a choice I made. It is what it is. I've seen more of my family, my daughter, in the last 4 years than I saw in the previous 10, 12.
Wow.
Not proud of that. It's just what it was. So that gave me the criteria. My own business, and I'm done traveling. I'm going to live here. I'm going to be here. I thought of a couple different options, and then I just came back to, wow, what WeWork did was extraordinary. And I thought, it doesn't need to be in Shanghai, Sao Paulo, London, wherever it might be. How about where people live? And of course, people live in those cities.
Right.
But I also know here in the Lehigh Valley, the volume of people that would leave to Jersey, to Philly, to New York every day. This is pre-COVID. Every day was extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, there were companies built on it.
And it's even more now.
It's just wild.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought, geez, I know this. Every single one that does it doesn't like that commute. There's nobody who enjoys that. Hour, 2 hours, 3 hours plus on, planes, trains, and automobiles. And if they had the option to work closer to home, they would. Again, this is pre-COVID. So I set out to kill the commute. I was going to build the finest of Fifth Avenue here in the Lehigh Valley and give people the opportunity to, instead of traveling, 2-3 hours back and forth to a WeWork or a nice office or wherever in New York or Philly, they could walk, bike, or drive 5, 10, 15 minutes to it right here. Then and COVID came along, did a much better job of killing the commute than I could.
Yeah,
I did.
How about that?
It's rough. It was rough. I was set to open up March of 2020, which is when the world.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah. So it's been a journey, to say the least.
That's incredible, man. There's so many tangents I want to take on that, and it's, to me, some of the things that really stand out too is that you embraced the Marine Corps, adage, or I guess maxim. I guess it's, I don't know, exists everywhere else too, but the Marines do it really well, is the jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, you went out and did all of the things.
Yeah.
But I also want to point out something that you did, or that you embodied, that I think that a lot of you will benefit from hearing, because this is something that I think that the military does a very good job at instilling in us, is that resourcefulness.
Mm-hmm.
You pointed out something when you were applying for Deloitte, and that you not only showed that you could do the job, but that you would do the job. And those are two very different things that I think that, honestly, a lot of people miss. Not even just, veterans. That aspect of will do the job is so important. It's so important that, I can't stress that enough. So thank you for illustrating that.
Sure.
So I want to rewind a little bit. If we go back to the transition itself, and this is something I've been asking everyone because I think it's a very interesting thing to drill into, is you likely had something at the time that you thought was super important. So not in retrospect, but at that time, what was that?
Well, help me understand that a little better. Something at the time of moving from the Marine Corps?
Yeah, exactly. So transitioning out of words here. What was in your mind is the most important thing that you needed to take care of
for that next transition?
Yeah, for the transition process. I know that, when we get out, there's a million things that we can focus on, right? Mm-hmm. However, there's usually one thing that you're I got to figure this out, whether it's, finding a job, whether it's, you know what I'm saying? What was top of mind for you upon getting out? What was your primary focus?
Yeah, so Boy, the truth, the real answer, I love it, but it was income.
Income, yeah.
I needed money.
Sure.
I needed to pay my bills. I needed to feed myself. The main one was just income.
Yeah.
Now that's a tricky one because you don't want to just jump at anything.
Yes.
Right. So it was trying to interplay that the urgency of needing something that made money, but having a pride that I wanted to be a respectful role. I wanted to be with an organization that would be recognized by people, things like that. I thought at that point the shift to law enforcement, it would be it's a respected role. It was the other one. I would say it certainly was an income. The other one was I recognized that at that time I needed a level of definitive role clarity of role clarity. For me to step into a sales role or a role where you kind of just got to figure it out for yourself at that point in time, I wasn't ready for that. I certainly wasn't ready for that. And I knew that.
Cool.
Through my life and obviously during that time period, I needed my marching orders. What is your job? Because if I wasn't going to create them myself at that point in time. I will say this, I believe I did a very good job over time learning that whether that's a comfort zone or not, you better figure out how to create your own marching orders.
Sure.
And that's long-term, mid-term, that is short-term, because big opportunities out there they're not beaten paths. They're not clearly defined.
Yeah.
Now there's going to be some of that. A partner in a law firm that makes tons of money and has this huge impact. Fair enough. You've got to go in as an associate and you got to grind and you got to put your time and, there's a path there. But outside of things like that, you've got to create it. You got to see opportunity and fill those gaps. You've got to make sure that you're seeing an opportunity that's, number one, it's actually an opportunity.
Right.
The other one is other people have to recognize it as such. It actually it needs to have a tangible value to it.
Sure.
Right. It's not enough to just say, this feels like it would be good for an organization. You can try that all you want, but you're not building a career on it. It's got to be, this is going to bring in more revenue. This is going to save more money.
Yeah.
This is going to draw more clients. This is going to get us to a better place. And then you have to prove it, right? You've got to actually do it. So I think the important one, honestly, was a necessity for me.
Right.
It was more or less. And the police officer piece was, it came in front of me. I thought it would be a shift that I could make very quickly, very easily. I figured I could do a very good job. I'd like to think I was a very good police officer. I don't think I'm going on a big stretch for that one. I think I was. And there was a level of ease in that transition.
Right.
I knew when I had to show up. I knew when it was done. I knew what I had to wear. I knew what my role was,
So there were some similarities to the most.
Yes, certainly. Now, mind you, I'll never forget the first time after, my trainings and you go through a period of time where you have a training officer with you all the time. I'll never forget the first time I rode out and it was just me solo. And I honestly had this flash in my head. I'm thinking, holy shit. I am driving out in a police car. I am armed. I am, the whole deal.
Yep.
And the 911 call is coming to me. And that's it. There, I can't call 911. I can't get help. I could bring others along, but it's a striking moment. I would think almost every cop has had it at one point in time. So yeah, you get that rigor and that clarity, but that role, there's many points in time where it's a figure it out. It's a figure it out because you think, boy, we didn't go through this in the academy,
right.
And that comes up all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You can run through all kinds of scenarios, but I'll tell you what, there's too many variables out there to be prepared for everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, the reason I asked that question is because I think that that's often a route that people, or a mindset that people have upon getting out, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I need that security. I need that financial piece. I need to get that job. And now don't get me wrong, like there's a necessity for that, right? There are ways to obviously go into the transition to ease that a little bit. However, and this is the next question I got for you, what was it that reflecting on it now, that was actually the most important thing that for you to have to struggle through or have to overcome upon getting out, that maybe would have been nice for that, young Terry Wallace to know?
I think the two things that come to mind, the first is what I just alluded to a little bit ago. You've got to create the opportunity. You've got to formulate that opportunity. Now, I'm hesitating on that a little bit because you can't just know that. You've got to know a space well enough to know what's an opportunity and what's not. So you've got to have some level, exactly. You've got to have some level of experience, or else you're just walking into a place and going based on what you think, based on superficial understanding, and you will be wrong all the time. That's just being honest. So you've got to get into something and really dig in and get some level of experience. So your perspective has it's not just validity, but there's some proven aspect to it. So if I'm proposing a recommendation or a thought or a new project or a new role or a new approach to something, it's rare it's going to be met with, hell yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it.
Right.
Because if it was that easy, it would have already been done, right? So you're going to then start running into some pushback, back and forth, and you've got to know something well enough to make the case for yourself, for that effort and yourself in that effort. And that requires you got to know your space. You've got to have you need to have the mental horsepower to think it through. You need to be able to articulate the case. Those things take time. So I would say the focus, if you're really going to move on, you got to learn. You got to get enough expertise in a realm that you can actually start to see the opportunities, and you can take advantage of the opportunities, and you can bring people along with you in that case. And that doesn't happen overnight.
No.
No. The other one I would say is, what's a good way of saying this? I started out by thinking, okay, I was going to be a Marine. The Marine Corps I was going to be an officer. And I'm like, well, that's my life. Then I decided not to do that. And I decided, okay, police officer. That's what I'll be. And then, maybe someday I'll be the chief of police. That's my life. As I started moving through, I realized to think of something that long-term is rarely helpful.
Oh, yeah.
I think the best way to approach things is, for the next X amount of years, and I don't think it's of weeks or months, is it a year? Is it 2 years? I am going to fully commit to blank.
Right.
And then I am going to reassess. I think that mentality would serve damn near everybody exceptionally well. The only person that's not going to serve well is someone who finds something that they want to do, and it truly is what they want to do, even once they actually figure out what's under the covers of that thing.
Sure.
So it's wonderful if you ever got a friend or anybody who says, I want to be a blank, and that's what they ended up doing, and they do it exceptionally well, and they do it for their career. That's amazing. Boy, let me tell you, that was a lucky shot, because you just don't know everything. So how would you possibly know? I think if you can put phasing into your thinking around your career, you will serve yourself extremely well. Yeah. Extremely well. As a police officer, again, I was thinking long term, but after I did it for a year, I'm like, you know what, this isn't it. And I remember thinking, damn it, I took a swing at something else, and this isn't what I want to do. Thinking, shit, I'm missing. Then once I got to Deloitte, I learned an enormous amount at Deloitte. This came from Deloitte. The Deloitte is, you're not missing. You're learning a great deal of things, and you've got to be constantly, you're working on what you're working on, but you got to lift your head up. And you kind of look around every now and then get back in it. What are you taking? These are the things that it's so cliche, but it's what are you getting out of it? What are you learning? What do you want to keep? Right. What do you want to shed? What do you how you want to think about these things? I really experienced this learning at Deloitte. Deloitte was my first encounter with, I hope this sounds all right, exceptionally bright people.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I remember being really struck, and I was uneasy my first year, maybe a little more at Deloitte. Uneasy because the folks that you're around, I mean, these are top of the class, big time schools, whatever, and very driven people. And I just remember being in these meetings and around these exceptionally bright people who were intensely focused on their projects, their clients, their career, and to no detriment to anybody else, to the credit of everyone around them. Exceptionally bright people, and it made me uneasy. I really did.
Some imposter syndrome there. So what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely that for that first year. Again, I was a complete anomaly. I was older than everyone who was at my level. I didn't go to the caliber of school that almost all of them went to.
Yeah,
I certainly didn't have I had a different background. I had a very different background, and it took me a good year before I realized I had a very different background. And boy, did it also have a lot of value to it.
Yes.
And that was a big shift for me. That was a big shift. And it was funny. I had a couple partners kind of try and pull that out of me, and I wasn't seeing it, but they were.
Yeah.
Which was very cool. I remember early on, a particular partner pulled me aside at a meeting, and he said to me, and I would convey this to anybody going through a transition. I was yes sirring, no sirring, yes ma'aming, no ma'aming, everybody. And I was only there a couple months when Spartan pulled it. I remember it was one World Financial Center, literally staring right across at the trade centers at the time. So this was 2000. This big, magnificent office. This guy, I say, hey, come in and have a seat. Very friendly, like. And I remember being unnerved because to me, this guy was a colonel or a general. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
So I kind of walk in all stiff, and I sit down, and I'm like, yes, sir. And he goes, I'll never forget. He said, Terry, that needs to be the last time you refer to anyone as sir in this environment. And I just didn't understand what he said. It didn't make sense to me. He said, there are no sirs. So he says, you need to see everyone as your peer. Now, certainly there's partners and there's whatever, you're going to be talking to clients, and, the CEO might come in or whatever it might be. No, you are their intellectual equal. You are there to actually move their business forward.
Right.
You are not there to serve them in the manner that I believe you're thinking of serving. You're not there to wait to be told what to do. You're not there to take an order.
Yeah.
You're there to bring your knowledge, your experience, and convey it and inject it into the conversation when you think it adds value. Don't ever do it when you don't think it adds value.
Right.
Don't be there just to ask questions. And he hit me hard, and it just was that's it with the deferential approach to life.
Yeah.
I remember talking to him saying, because I really struggled with it. I saw it as respect. I feel I'm giving people respect. I don't want to be seen as not being respectful. And he just put it right out there. He said, it's not respect. Respect is bringing value to the table. It's not being inferior to someone.
Yeah.
And or being perceived as being deferential or inferior.
Yeah.
Respect is showing up, adding value every day. You do that. He said, I don't want to hear you calling anyone sir ever again. And honestly, I stopped. I just stopped. And that may sound odd to folks in the military. Yeah. I tell you what, it's something to really strongly consider.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Man, you had so many nuggets in that piece. One that I want to touch on a little bit is this idea of being able to pull learnings out of things. Mm-hmm. And actually what's amazing about what you just brought up here is like literally I think every episode we've had at this point has touched on this in some way, shape, or form, whether even if it's like a really tough scenario, like we're down, I think TJ Carson talked about when he was in his basement, like after being broken up with who he thought was the love of his life following getting out of the military. He was in a deep, dark place. But looking back on it now, he's like, wow, I mean, there was actually a lot of great things that came out of that. There were a lot of learnings. Mm-hmm. What's your mindset on that? Like, how do you now go into a situation almost, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, if you don't look at it this way, but how do you go into a situation preparing to pull the learnings out of it as opposed to, doing it in retrospect? Because I think, and the reason I ask it that way is because when we do it in retrospect, I mean, obviously it serves us, right? However, the loop of how quickly it can serve you going into it, that mindset, I think is a lot more valuable. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to my mind there is you've got to know your idiosyncrasies and your weaknesses and whatever it might be. You've got to manage yourself through them. Mine tended to be to speak, it's going to sound odd, but I still speak very definitively. Everything's a yes, it's a no, it's a strong perspective on the yeses and the nos, and things are right and things are wrong, and back and forth. I don't mean just from a character perspective, but how you approach things. I would say I know myself well enough to know that does not serve me well. It inhibits my communication. So I learned early on was go light. It isn't that's wrong. It isn't, this is the only way to do things. There's multiple ways to get things done or whatever it might be. Sure. So I think it comes down to that, know thyself, right? And I tell you what, we could all know ourselves a lot better. We could all know ourselves a lot better. And I think it's doing the very difficult work of knowing what you're good at and being honest with yourself, what you're not good at, being real honest with yourself there, and making those adjustments. I was an ineffective communicator for a long time in my career, and my career moved well. My career moved along nicely. It could have moved along better. It could have been a lot less painful if I was a much more effective communicator. Yeah. I thought effective meant decisive yes, no clarity. And there are times when it is. If you're trying to change minds and bring people along and make adjustments or organizational transitions and things like that, just direct yeses and nos, whatever it might be, this is how it's going to be, makes things slower. It absolutely makes things slower. Because again, the vast majority of organizations are not like the Marine Corps or even law enforcement. Just because you say everyone go right doesn't mean everyone goes right. And not even close. And you could make the case, well, this organization would be much better if everyone did. I would make the case it would be much worse and probably wouldn't exist if everyone just followed orders. Because where's the innovation? Where's the innovation? Where's the change coming? How are you evolving? How does that even work? You're unplugging people. And again, there's organizations where that makes sense. There's time and place where that makes sense. If you're talking about growth of a business, whether it's revenue growth or people growth or growing geography or whatever it might be. Fair enough. Yeah. It's a very good point. That type of communication is detrimental at best. So coming back to your question, I would say you've got to really be honest with yourself, man. You got to be honest with yourself. The other one, and I'll take that down to a whole nother level. I remember in my career, and I did it, and I've talked to a lot of folks, Veterati, we talked at one time. Mm-hmm. So I was with that supporting that organization for a while and interviewing a lot of people, meeting with a lot of people going through transitions, and they were wonderful. It was a great organization. I remember hearing from people constantly, well, what is it you're looking for in a career? We go back and forth, and you hear all the obvious answers. I want to learn, I'm looking forward, it was always this, I want to do something where I'm learning a lot. I'd say that's great, but wait, what's the figure? How much money do you want to make? What's important? Do you want to have what's a title you might want? Now, these things get uncomfortable because nobody wants to say, you know what, I'll tell you what I want. I want X amount of dollars. And I want to be called the vice president, of whatever function. No one wants to say it because it doesn't sound good. But I'll tell you what, if it's important to you, then it is important to you. And it's not out of a place of narcissism or whatever it might be. There's a reason you want to make what you want to make. And it could come down to, I just want to have that security and peace of mind for me and my family. That's as noble as it comes. That's not an evil, greedy thing. The title thing, that's another thing. People are rarely honest with themselves. Oh, that doesn't really matter. I'm not looking for the recognition. Some people aren't. Some people are. And if you are, don't pretend you're not.
Right.
Because you're cutting yourself out there. If that is important, be honest about that. At least be honest with yourself. Right? You don't have to walk around going, I tell you what, in this annual or this quarterly meeting, they better call me out in front of everybody because that's important to me. But if it is, know that it is, and have the right conversations to position that. You've got to feed yourself, man. You got to feed yourself what moves you. But that's knowing yourself. Anyway, I think knowing yourself's a big one, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Well, I think that you're touching on something also that's really, really salient, man, to everyone I've ever met, period, is not just knowing, I think, the outcome that you want, but even deeper than that, the why, right? Because, the titles and the money and all that are great. However, you're going to get there and you're going to be like, well, now what? Right. And each one of those things, and I think this is important, right, is that those are just means to an end. What's actually the end, right? Is it that you need that security? And hey, we all need some sense of security. So I'm not trying to say that that's a bad thing per se. The point I guess I'm trying to make here is we want to feel something with those. Whether it's important, we all want to feel important, whether it is the ability to give, whether it is the ability, to just constantly grow. I mean, growth in itself is a really important thing, but those are the ends, right? Like, what are we trying to get after there? So I think to me, like, when I hear that, what comes up to mind is like, that's a lot in like the goal process, right? And I think a lot of people don't do that, right? Is like, to your point here, hey, we're getting out and I want to go do great things. Cool. What does that look like in concrete terms? The more we can take something and make it almost visual, clarity, right? Clarity is power. Having that sort of clarity, now you know what to focus on to get where you want to go. And then when you can really attach that why to it, man, that's that driving force. That's that juice. That's actually what's going to pull me to it, because pushing is hard. Yeah. When you're being pulled, when you're being pulled, when you're being pulled, like, that's a whole nother force.
You're hitting on something very important. And I think it's one of the most difficult things to do, because I would say almost anyone you talk to, when you're talking about a why, it ends up being some form of, anybody I've ever talked to that I could think of, it's some form of, I want to help other people. I want to add value to others. Yeah. I want to, and I think people have to be very worried about stopping there, because congratulations, so does everybody else. Maybe there's a few psychos somewhere who aren't interested in helping others, but at the end of the day, that's kind of that's humanity, right? We're all interested in adding value and contributing to others. I think it's very difficult to take that purpose and give it more definition. That gets really difficult. Yeah, how do you do that? In what manner? Through what vehicle are you doing that? How does that, I hate to say it, but how is it measured? Is it measured just on my gut feel? Do I feel good about myself today? Or or am I the type of person who wants to see, this is a personality proclivity dynamic. For some people, it's, I feel that I'm focusing on the right why. I've got a good purpose and I'm adding value to folks. Can't really measure it. Can't really see it. It's not something I touch, now that's fair enough. Some people, the reason I'm saying it, it wouldn't compute to me. Like, in my brain, this business here, some of the things that I really key on, we have 136 businesses that work out of here, over 260 members. Like, I don't see that for the audience to go, wow, that's impressive. That's me. That's my internal measurement. And I know myself well enough to know that I need that. I need that, because if I don't know those things, I'm a very Teutonic person, right? I want that direct line of sight. I want that clarity. Is this being, what's successful for me is next month those numbers are higher. Right. If those numbers are lower, and there's other numbers I focus on in different You call them KPIs, call them whatever you want. I come back to this knowing yourself. To me, that's important. So if I think about my why or my purpose, honestly, I started out with a number of things, but one of them was support 1,000 businesses in the Lehigh Valley. We're at 136. My brain goes, damn, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, but you're on track.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
So I come back to the knowing themselves, because I do think if most people will say, what's your why? What's your purpose? It's some form of, I want to elevate others. I want to support others. I want to help others. I want to, you understand where I'm getting at. I'd suggest to people to dig even deeper on that one. Dig even deeper on that. Yeah. And figure out how's that actually going to work in their world.
Yeah. No, thank you. So I'm curious, someone's getting out, and there's, 200,000 people who get out of the military a year, right? What would you tell them right now? Like, what would be your single piece of advice to someone who's making the transition, whether it's for them or for their family, loved ones, whatever, like what would be that one thing that you think they should focus on and work through?
Yeah, my mind goes to two different places, but so I'm going to give you two if you don't mind. One is a secure platform. You need a roof over your head. You need to know where your meals are coming from. Like, you've got to. That's just a table stakes. You have to get that right. Exactly. Yeah. You've got to get there. And if that's not absolutely foundational and set, get that set. Because if you start, Maslow's hierarchy. If you start shooting high and you still don't have your foundation set, and that sounds. I don't want to say easy. That's not easy.
Well, it's simple,
but it's simple. There you go. I've had points in my life where I remember my wife and I'm going back quite a ways, but it was literally, I remember going to Sears and getting a Discover card so we'd go grocery shopping. That wasn't the highlight of my life, but there was a time it was, holy shit, we need to eat. So there's a reality there. So I'd say, do not underestimate that. Get that set. And that may take you, it may be instantaneously for you. As soon as you step out, you're good to go. That may take you a year. If it takes you more than a year to get yourself stable, then you've probably got deeper digging to do.
Well, being honest with yourself, right? I think that's an important piece there.
Yes. The next one I would do as far as coming out of the military is recognize everywhere else ain't the military. And side note, that's a good thing. Because I have talked to a lot of people. It's like, if ABC Corporation, if we were run like the military, we'd be this, that, and the other thing. We'd have clear direction. We'd have clear goal. I would say, great. If you were run like the military, you wouldn't be in existence.
Right.
You wouldn't be, because you wouldn't have innovated. You would have done this. You wouldn't have been able to turn on a dime and this, that, and whatever it might be. You wouldn't have been able to move into this market and shut this down. You wouldn't have been able to have the real difficult conversations where, guess what? We need to let go of a field sales force. That's a terrible decision to make, but it's the right decision to make sometimes.
Right.
These are brutal things that we don't experience, that aren't experienced in the military. So that fluidity, don't confuse it. Now, certainly there's a balance. You don't want to be completely thrown to the wind with every role or, as an organization. But more rigor is not always matter of fact, it's almost rarely, isn't the solution. Everything running like the military isn't what you want. It isn't what you want. It's not what that organization wants. And whether you think it's what you want or not, it ain't what you want. So I think be very mindful of this and look forward. Stop looking back. The way we did it there, the way we did it in the military. We had this SOP and we had all these, and we're going to put this binder together and we're all going to follow this thing. Guess what? You go put that binder together and it will never be open for the rest of ever. And good. Nobody should ever touch that damn thing.
Yeah.
What I learned and I feel very comfortable sharing is where someone from the Marine Corps or military would come from is let that rigor go. Let it go. But you do need to focus on three main things. Role clarity. Know your job. Role clarity, decision rights, and information flow. So know your job and know how it connects or doesn't connect with other people in the organization. And know that it's important to connect with people even though sometimes they don't have to. So if I'm HR, I'm rolling out a big project, it's my project. I got the funding. We've got the resources, whatever it might be. I'm going to meet with someone in legal. I'm going to meet with someone in finance. I'm going to meet with somebody in IT because they can decide whether they should do more or not. Because you don't know the interconnectivity of things is very complicated and very tricky. If at nothing else, they don't need to be involved, but they ask to be kept up to date. Great. That's a relationship capital dynamic. Next time their projects come along, you're going to hear about their projects because they may have some implications on you. So that's a big one. Decision rights, huge. Military, it's very clear. It is very clear. Like we literally walk around with it on us.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're the decision maker here. You have to go to that one to make a decision. Doesn't exist in the civilian world.
Absolutely right.
And I think a lot of people will say that's a detriment. It's absolutely not a detriment. There are ways you need to understand how your organization makes decisions. Mm-hmm. And it is not always reporting structure. Matter of fact, I wouldn't even say it's more often than not reporting structure. You've got influencers in various ways. You've got cross-functional dynamics that are going on. You've got, are people looking to coalesce perspective? Who forms the recommendation to hand it? Because knowing who the decision maker is one thing. In almost every case outside the military, and I'd venture a guess in the military, the person who's actually making the decision isn't the person with all the information.
Oh my God.
Someone needs to think this through, connect all the dots, formulate a recommendation, and lay options out in front of the decision maker. Who's doing that in your organization? I'll tell you who it should be, you.
Right.
If you were doing that, and you're going to a senior person, your boss or whatever it might be, and your formula, you got to be mindful. You don't want to be stepping on toes or whatever, but you're saying, I've pulled together this information. There's some really good stuff we can get done. Here are the options that we have. And you're having those conversations, the promotion is coming.
Well, that's being a leader.
1,000%. And now you can also get met with this. This is not your job.
Right.
Go talk to your function. Go talk to your manager. I'm not sure why you're here in front of me. Fair enough.
Yeah, you learned something.
You absolutely learned something. Doesn't mean don't keep doing it in different ways, but role clear, decision rights. Last one's information flow. Talk to people more. Because again, this line of hierarchy is very clear. You don't need to go out to all these different people and have these conversations, telling them what you got going on. You know, in the Marine Corps, you'd be met with, freeze, stop. Why are you telling me this? And understandably so. It's like, why is that a minute of my time that you just took and I don't need you taking? You know, right. Civilian organizations it's very different. Have those conversations. You are building relationship capital, and that is so important. That is so important in an organization. And don't think it's all wrong, and don't think it should be done differently, because that's exactly how it should work.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Last couple of questions for you. So what are some like books that have helped shape you on this transition? If you had to like recommend one to someone getting out, what would it be?
Oh, on this particular one, I'm thinking back to then. The books I read back then that helped me. One is probably one was what color is your parachute?
Oh, interesting.
Have you read this?
No.
Familiar with this? I don't know what edition or iteration it's probably on at this point in time. Now I'm going back 25 years, so that's a little tricky. What color is your parachute was a book that I read. In essence, it was, what do you want to do when you grow up? And understand yourself, figure yourself out, that type of thing.
Oh, I like that.
That was very helpful with me at the time. I'm hesitating on a little bit because it was a long time ago, and I'm not certain how it would work for someone today. But anyway, what color is your parachute was very good for me. Another one that I experienced later on, and it's more than just a book, but it's Strength Finders. Familiar with Strengths Finders? No. So Strengths Finders really focuses on Tom Buckingham. The author is a fellow named something Buckingham. I forget exact story, but he used to work for an organization that did tons of research around personalities and that type of thing. And he came out with this approach. You answer all these questions. So it's a personality battery of some sort, right? And it kind of gives you a sense of what is it that incentivizes you, what moves you, what is it you're seeking, and I tell you, I've done it a couple times and it's stayed pretty consistent. There's a lot of things out there. Sure. Strengths finders, Gregor, the color code,
DISC,
Myers-Briggs. There you go. Oh, I would say I found, now more may have come up since then, but Strengths Finders was the best one I found. I've done them all. Things like Myers-Briggs, I found that a little, all seemed right. I wasn't sure how to really make that work for my career.
Yeah, there's some interesting things about that one. I think like the predictive index is probably the best one I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say, do any of them, do all of them. But this comes back to know yourself. Yeah. Right. And man, if there's something that comes out of it that you don't think you like, it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
yes. In fact, it's probably a really good thing that it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You may have been avoiding it for a long time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And gotta be honest with yourself and take a couple of them, figure it out. But this comes back to the know yourself. I did a whole bunch of those. Some I liked, some I didn't like. The one I liked the most was this one, Strengths Finders. But it may be different for different people. But that's more than a book, right? That's that's that active learning about yourself. Whatever it might be. I would say if you're going to do anything, gotta do that. You gotta dig into those things and figure out what moves you and your personality construct and proclivity, whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about, do you have a favorite podcast?
I do. Anything Jordan Peterson says.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I listen to his probably comes out every 3 days now. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with Jordan. Absolutely. He's got a lot of different things going. I've gone
good books soon.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I've seen him speak a number of times. Cool. I actually have a great picture of him and I squaring up. Boss, I swear to God, I got one of these tickets afterwards where you get to a meet and greet type thing. And I said, because everyone walks up and shakes his hand and just kind of stands there. I'm like, how about we do a UFC face-off? Yeah. And it was so great. He just laughed and he goes, all right. He goes, you got to promise me you're not going to put this out on the internet saying that I was trying to punch you. I won't. Yeah. So I never did actually. But I got this great video, picture of me and him doing the Irish boxer thing around each other. Anyway, honestly, I don't want to fanboy too hard, but that is an extraordinary mind, and we are all well served by him being out in the world sharing his thinking. So
I want to pull that for just for a second because we just have a couple minutes. Mm-hmm. Do you recommend people go to those sort of like those let's say guru events? Because I know there's some that have served me. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yes. Now, the reason I say it like that, I read every damn self-help book you could find. Yeah. I'm at the point now where I refuse to pick them up. Oh,
really?
Yeah. They all say the same thing.
That's true.
And now that doesn't take away the value of them. But at some point in time, I was just like, okay, now I'm a fool for continuing to read these because I'm not getting any more out of this. Now it's about doing it. Yes. Right? Do it. And I felt I was doing it, for the most part, but you could always do better. You could always do more. You could always do, you understand where I'm coming at.
Absolutely.
I remember I was taking a trip. It's probably when I was still at Pfizer now, but I remember anytime I traveled, particularly if it was Asia or whatever, you got some good hours on a plane. I would get a good book, and that was my objective. Get through this book. Often it was the trip there and back. But and I've never read a fictional book. Yeah. I don't know that I would recommend that to anyone. That's just how I'm wired. That's not true. In school, I read a couple books, fictional books. And I wasn't a voracious reader as a kid by any stretch. Any stretch. As an adult, I am. I very much am. And I honestly, it was whatever self-help, accomplishment, seize the day thing I could find. Boom, boom, snap it up, pour through. Yeah. And eventually I just went, now I'm hesitating because I don't want to say I'm wasting my time because they've all got some gems and kernels.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And you can't step in the same river twice, right? Like you're going to get something.
There you go. Then I realized I was just standing in rivers all day long, and I was like, all right, it's time for me to
execute.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say dig into this. So yes, I'd be mindful who. I don't think there's anyone out there spewing anything that's going to harm you. It's more or less how much is it going to help. Again, I would come back to Jordan Peterson at that point in time. Now there's obviously great minds out there doing great things, and moving people along. At some point in time, you'll listen to almost everything any one of these folks will say, and you go, yep, I know that. Yeah, I knew that. I knew that deep down, or I knew that.
Or I'm doing that on a
and
that's what really matters.
Which I think there's a time and place for it, but at some point in time, it's time for you to actually. Well, you have to just do it and learn from that.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So now you're not sitting in class anymore. Now you're teaching the class. You're teaching the class to yourself. Now you're figuring out how that class actually portrays into a business or into an organization. There's layers to this thing. We could all learn more. There's no doubt.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you gave me so much today, man. You've given everyone here so much today. I really appreciate it. How can people find you?
LinkedIn is always easy. Terry Wallace, LinkedIn. Also, if you look at Venture X Bethlehem, you can just call here and you can get a hold of me pretty quickly. We're going to continue to grow here, so at some point in time, I won't be sitting here. But as of right now, I'm here.
All right. Thank you, brother.
It's a pleasure, man. Yeah, always.
Thank you all for coming by. If you like what you saw today, please give us a like or a subscribe or both. That would be great. Please leave whatever you have in the comments. If you have any feedback, drop it in there. I'm happy to improve this in any way I can. You can see we're trying to change around like the set a little bit here. But if you have people that you'd like to see on the show or questions that you'd like to see me ask, please let me know. Till next time. Thank you, man.
Yeah, it was good.